friends. Welcome to Coding Garden. I realize my camera lags every time I switch to this scene, but I think it gets better. My lighting is different today. Thank you, Jellywoot, for that. Hello, friends. Welcome in, everyone. Glad to have you. We got a few supports. Okay, Not Now with the 28 months. Mr. Whiskers with the 7 months. Rogue Soul with the 28 months yesterday. I don't know if we saw that yesterday. And Jellywoot with the 29 months. Thank you all for the supports. And thank you, Brofar, who says my starting soon screen is sleek. I'm trying my best. And the Shebas, welcome in. Thank you for that gifted sub. Congrats to QSync Milo. Very cool. I put a whole bunch of tape on my wall. I don't know if you can see it. I mean, for those of you that have seen it before, I put a bunch of blue tape on the edges so that my blue screen will extend a little bit further. And I also pulled my desk back a little bit, but what that means is I can reach further without my hand getting cut off. I can do this. I think I cut off like, oh, I mean, see, that's even more than I expect. I can reach pretty far. I don't know, Terawatt, you're usually the one that's most critical of the bad frame rate. How's the frame rate right now? Because I'm looking, and it doesn't look good. It does, like, I mean, I guess maybe you'll get used to it. Also, I feel like I'm a lot brighter than usual, and that might be this light. But welcome in, everyone. Glad to have you. You can still count the frames. I'm gonna shift this light slightly. Actually, you know what I can do? I totally forgot about this. I like that lighting better. What do you all think? The frame rate isn't. I'm guessing. Because I'm using a 4K camera, it's like it's just too much. It's too much over a USB 3 connection, so that gives us a slower frame rate. That's unfortunate. I think most people just tune it out after a while. It is so yeah. So it's 4K. I'm technically only streaming at 1080p. Like let's try this. I know you can't. You can hear me now. It's actually not important that you can hear me because I'm trying to fix the video. Give me a moment. Boom. Okay. Do. Like that. Cool. And then that. Cool. And then that goes there. And then this goes about like that. Okay. Now, the frame rate is so much better. Isn't the frame rate so much better? Do I look different? Do I look grainier because now it's 1080p instead of 4K? But the frame rate, I can tell already that it is better. Check 1 2. Yeah. So now I can fix the audio now. That's easy. I mean, well, it's not that easy. It's going to take a little bit of trial and error. But okay, so now there's no fixing of the audio at all. We might need to adjust it by like 200 milliseconds. I just started. Yeah, yeah. It's good now? It's much better? Atari... Terawatt, come on. Like, I know you might be, like, slightly joking. But... again? Okay. But does everyone here agree that this actually does look better than when I had the setting for 4K? Because that's actually baffling to me. Yes! 4K. Yeah, we're gonna write some code today. Actually, I mean, honestly, I'm gonna be honest, there's gonna be less chat interaction today because I am recording this for YouTube. 5 mil, okay, yeah, we can adjust it slightly. That is not an issue. Let's go 100 millisecond offset. Seashells by the seashore. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Better? Better? Money. Okay. I also realized that I didn't style my beard. It's a little all over the place. Oh yeah, just because I don't like React doesn't mean I can't teach it. And doesn't mean I can teach it better than a lot of people out there. Probably because I don't like React means that I am a better teacher. I guess. I don't know. I think we're in a good spot. My hair is a little greasy. I need to adjust my my beanie. Give me one moment. Oh, not that. Okay, I might have to adjust it later too, but I think we have arrived. Only Pain says I'm so confused. This is a coding stream. However, I wanted to make sure that I got my video and everything right, because this is gonna be on. I mean, all of this stuff is on YouTube. The thing is, I have old YouTube videos that do not look good. I had a bad camera. My blue screen effect wasn't that good. It's just that, like, this is my full-time job now, so I feel like I should look good and I should sound good. All right, Terawatt is making me self-conscious about my blur. So, what are right now? I have this is a Gaussian blur. Gaussian linear maybe. Doesn't seem to do anything. Gaussian or Gaussian. Directional. Whoa! That's actually really trippy. The blur is like, you know, it's like when you're watching a news show, and they, it's like they're about to go to a commercial or something like that. That's why I have the blur. Yeah, I mean, obviously I can turn it off, but I want there to be a slight, blend it with white. I don't know what that means, Terawatt. I don't know. So basically, when I go to the scene and it's like the "Be Right Back" scene or something like that, I like to have the blur on. You're just here to make fun of me, Terawatt. I think the term that people use on Twitch is I'm being one-guyed. I'm being one-guyed by Terawatt. But I don't know. This is good enough. This is good enough. Oh yeah, that's another thing that I did. The on-air sign isn't lit up. There's actually just an LED pointed at the back of it. You can see it shining slightly. I put the LED so that it makes it look like it's lit up. I want to do a real hardware project with that though. I'm gonna have a Raspberry Pi Zero inside of it that will literally detect when I go live, and it will automatically turn on if I actually am live on Twitch. That's the plan, eventually, anyways. Yeah, and those are baked beans for demonstration purposes. I have not heard of the black box extension, Yusuf. I have not. All right. Glassmorphism. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. I'll work on that later. But I get what you're saying. I think that will look good. I'll have to figure out how to do it as an overlay in OBS. Yeah, I'll work on that later. I do kind of want to go fix my beard though. It's a little all over the place today. How can you connect to MongoDB? And it fills in the code for you. Oh, you're probably thinking of what's it called? Someone tell me. GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot is probably what you're thinking of. So I live in the United States. I live in Denver, Colorado, and it is currently 1:56 p.m. for me. Yeah. So look for GitHub Copilot. I don't think it's free anymore. But I will be right back. Pick somebody in chat and compliment them. Pick one person in chat and give them a compliment. I will be back in like 2 minutes. See you soon. Hello, hello. I'm back. I think I look all right now. You probably can't tell the difference. But I can, and that's all that matters. Welcome in, everybody. Glad to have you. So yeah, what are we doing today? If you take a look at my YouTube channel, it has been, it's been over a month since I uploaded a new video, but all of the recent videos have been about TypeScript. And so today will be a continuation of that. If you're a keen viewer, you've probably already seen that what I'm going to build today, I've already built. I built it, and yeah, so everyone take a sip of whatever you got. Tea, water. I have already built the thing that I'm going to build today, but I want to do it again, and I want to do it with less distractions, and because I have already built it once before, it should go a little bit smoother, and we have an example code base to go from. Anyways, so that's the plan, and if you're interested in TypeScript and oh no, are you sick, the she-boss? Sorry to hear that. Hopefully you feel better. And hopefully you found all the gear that you wanted. So this is just going to be a client for this CRUD API that we built. And Dana Chu, thank you very much for the distracting bits. So yeah, this is an API that we built with TypeScript. It's an Express app. It talks to MongoDB. The main point of really me building this thing was to demonstrate how to use TypeScript with Express and Node.js. And so we have that, but now this is purely a JSON API that we built. So the idea is we are building a client for it using React. And it allows us to create, read, update, and delete to-dos. Yeah, like to-dos, things that you need to do. Oh yeah, sorry to hear that, the she-boss. Hopefully you're feeling better. Or you get to feeling better. That. Oh, it's Snickerdoodle Coffee. I mean, that's fun to hear. You got an interview at Amazon. I'm sure you'll do fine. I feel like, from what I've heard and read, they seem pretty desperate to hire people. Not to say that you don't deserve to be hired and that they need to be desperate for them to hire you. All of that to say that you have a better chance of getting hired now than ever, I think. And Super Hands Deluxe, thank you very much for the Prime sub. Is that a Peep Show reference? Super Hands? Yeah, Swift is pretty sweet. I've done like a little bit of Swift before. But what's up, Drills? Welcome in. Yeah. It is indeed. Nice. Cool. So yeah, that's it, and that's what we're gonna build. I need to get everything set up. The one thing is, last time we did this, I set up a Docker container for our backend. Yeah. Because when someone follows this tutorial, they're going to need to have this API running. So technically what they can do is they can pull this code down, and I'll probably redo this for the video, but I just want to talk through it right now. But they'll need to pull this down and then start up this backend. Here's the issue. My laptop doesn't handle Docker that well. The fans spin up really loud, and then when the fans are really loud, it's hard to hear me over the mic. You can hear me in the microphone. There's just a lot of background noise. So I'm trying to think, like, what is the best way to do this? Like, I guess I could... I don't have an... This is a 7-year-old MacBook. This is a 2015 MacBook Pro. For most things, it works fine. It just really struggles with Docker. Buy a new laptop. Let's see. So one thing I did do since the last time I worked with this, and the Vanisher. Thank you very much for that resub. Oh, I didn't see your PR yet. I'll take a look at it. Yeah, I mean, and that's what's unfortunate, right, Codex? Like, it would have been nice if I could just show how easy it is to deploy this thing, but I mean, I think like that's the issue is, if someone wants to follow along to this tutorial, they are technically following a React tutorial. And what that means is they might not know that much about backend. So I think it's too much of an ask to ask them to deploy. I mean, because we probably could deploy this to Versal and then set up a free instance of Mongo on MongoLab, or not MongoLab, MongoDB Atlas. But it seems like a lot to ask for someone that's like basically learning React, because the M2 Mac Mini for really? That's a great price. I mean, I would consider it. Like, I mean, if you look at my setup here, like, I'm basically staring at a MacBook. This is my stream status because I'm streaming from that gaming computer over here. But I could very easily just have like a Mac Mini on this desk. It's not that I'm tired of it. It's just that there are certain things that really cause the fans to spin up. That's all. And Moo, thank you very much for that Prime sub. Appreciate you. So here's the thing. If someone is learning React and they want to pull up this backend, they could start Docker and then just do Docker compose up. They could type that. That's literally going to start the MongoDB. It's going to start the Express app, and then it's just ready to go. So as a front-end dev, you don't have to worry about it. You literally run that command. As long as you have Docker installed, you're good to go. And see, now the backend is up and going. And then we have ourselves a little API. And if I go to API v1/todos, we have ourselves some to-dos, learn TypeScript and learn Vue. So it's running. But what I worry about is, I mean, you can see my CPU temperature here, is the longer it's running, the more resources it uses. My fans will spin up. And the other issue I had last time was VS Code was really lagging for like TypeScript autocomplete, and that was a bit of a bummer. But let's see. So since then I have reduced the amount of resources that Docker can have. I've reduced like the number of CPUs and the amount of memory that it can use. I'm curious if we go into this React code base, will VS Code lag? The thing is, like, there are scenarios, and I've worked in code bases where VS Code does not lag. Like, I have perfect autocomplete of everything. Yeah. Come on, Terawatt. MongoDB is fine. It's fine. Yeah, and so that is actually what I've been doing for the Fresh Spots app that we've been working on. I run Docker over there. But the tricky part is when I tell people that are following this tutorial what to do, I need to tell them, and I need to be able to show them that they should go in this folder and run Docker compose up. I need to show them that. So if I'm running it on a separate computer, that gets a little bit tricky. But let's see how TypeScript is doing. I mean, it looks like TypeScript is initiated. We know what all of these types are. If I do query client dot, there's a slight delay in the autocomplete as to like that. It's like a probably a 500 millisecond delay, which isn't horrible. And then like here, like if I do command, it says loading, and then I can see the properties down here. And you can hear my fan spinning up. My CPU is at 170 right now. So yeah, I mean, you make a good point, Sonny. Let me actually try that. So if I create a separate Docker container that is MongoDB only, I think my computer can handle that better, because right now the Docker Compose is technically starting up two separate containers. We've got the API container and the DB container. So if I created a Docker Compose .db file that only had Mongo inside of it, I guess I could do profiles that only start up specific. I've never used these before. MongoDB kills MacBooks. I'm sure the newer MacBooks handle it just fine. So then, yeah. So these are if you do want to catch up on all this stuff, it's a bit. But if you look at the archive channel, all of the old streams where I work on this stuff is there. So, I mean, you can see me build the API. You can see me write that Docker Compose file. All that stuff is on the archive channel. See you later, BTRSL. Thanks for hanging out, dropping in. And so then you do -- profile. You specify the profile, and then it only starts those up. That's actually pretty cool. Let's see. Do I literally just add a profiles property? And I've never heard of overlay either. There's a lot of Docker stuff I've never used. So I'll say profiles DB, and then profiles API. So these two things are in a separate profile. And then if I do Docker Compose profile DB up. Why would I want restart always on this service? In case it crashes. I don't know. Yeah, in case it crashes, it'll auto restart. Though, I mean, I guess the point you might be making is, well, why would it crash? Yeah, that's why. You know what it means. It's like, well, why would I expect it to crash? I don't know. Do not lag my Mac. Yeah, so the idea here is that if I only start up Mongo, that's not going to take as many resources, and then I don't need a container to start up the backend. So if I just do Docker Compose up, does that start? Oh, but then you have to specify both profiles. What would be the command if I wanted to start up both? I would have to pass both of them in. I think that's fine. So start up the DB, and then start up the backend. And this isn't running in a container, so it shouldn't take up as many resources. The only issue with that is now I actually need to update the env, and I need to expose the Mongo port. So over here, Mongo. Good call, NFC codecs. I like that. So if you give them both profile all, if you say profile all up all, it will start both of them. But if I say profile up DB, it'll only start DB, etc. Okay, that's good to know. What is the MongoDB port? Is it 27? It's in our environment variable. 27. I was there. 27017. 5432. That's Postgres. Cool. So that exposes the port, and then when my backend starts up that isn't in a container, it actually needs to. The Mongo host is actually localhost instead of DB. That's so 27020 is the encrypted port. I did not know that. What's up, Limeotes? Welcome in. Well, MongoDB undefined. It's in my environment variable file. Perfect. So it's not even reading in the Mongo host. Let's see where we have that specified. Yeah, these are being loaded in from process.env. And where do we call .env? We call it here. This needs to be called here? Yeah, that was it. Basically, the API requires the routes. The routes require the database connection. The database connection spins up before the NV got loaded. So the NV needs to be loaded before everything else. Order of operations. Cool. I think I like this a little bit better because the API should still work. Authentication failed. Cool. This is that issue we had a while back. Auth source admin. Didn't know you could mix common imports with ES imports. Yeah, it depends on how your code is running, but because this code is TypeScript, which then needs to be transpiled, the TypeScript transpiler allows you to mix and match. I think if you were doing pure Node.js ESM modules, I don't know if you could even have require in there. Username, password, host, port, database name, auth source admin. Yeah. Oh. MongoDB might actually be running on my machine. It is, and it started. Oof. Brew services stop. MongoDB. So this is MongoDB. Yeah, Shark Turnip thought about. I mean, some of you might have thought about it. MongoDB was already running on my machine, so which means when the backend started up, it was connecting to MongoDB on my machine instead of the one in the container. Okay, this should fix it then. I haven't used Warp Terminal. I, especially like in the last year or two, I am of the opinion that if what I am using works and the new stuff doesn't really provide anything new, I'm just going to use what works. And I've been using iTerm for years, and it works. So I don't really see a reason to switch to something like Warp Terminal. But eventually, if I don't like iTerm anymore, I might try some other stuff. Yeah, technically I could have exposed a different port and then changed the connection port, but I don't want MongoDB running on my machine anyways. So, yeah. Have I tried Fig? What is Fig? Moment of truth. Well, it's true, a codex. I mean, it's my own fault. My system is slow. Yeah, there's random stuff running that I don't know about. Okay, that's hung up now for some reason. What does iTerm have that native terminal doesn't? It has themes. Topology is closed. Great. Great. It has more themes and settings. It has things like if you hold down command, you can click on links. That doesn't work in the normal terminal. It has push notifications, like when a command completes. There's a couple of like quality of life things that it has. I have not considered putting Linux on this MacBook. I have wiped and reloaded it pretty recently. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't used Fig. Okay. Mongo host, local host. What does this mean? Yeah, so I'm just what we had before was a Docker compose that had both a Node container and a Mongo container. Now we're just trying only a Mongo container, yeah, I'm confused too, Moshiko. We'll get there in a second. The issue is client variable needs to be reinstantiated again. I could try that. The issue is now that I have my Node app started separately from the Mongo container, it doesn't seem to want to connect to the Mongo database. They're passing in multiple options here. And Chief Mustardo, thank you very much for the Prime. Have I tried turning it off and on again? I mean, honestly, I haven't, so I can try that. Let's kill the MongoDB container. Nothing is running. Great. Kill this. You know what? I don't even need to use Docker. I could actually use... I could tell the viewer how to run that Docker command. That's honestly all I need to do. That's honestly, I don't know why we're going down this path. I can tell the viewer that if they want to start up the backend, they can just type Docker compose up. Everything will work just fine for them. Let's undo all the changes I did here, and then undo the change I did there. And then what is the existing change? I mean, technically this change needs to be there. Host.docker. Oh, I've never used that before. That's super interesting. It should be local. I've always been able to use localhost though because I was exposing the port. Like once you expose the port, you can use localhost, right? But regardless, we're actually it makes more sense for me to not even use Docker because then my system is using less resources. Oh, good call, Limeoats. Yeah, because the other service was started. I needed to kill that, restart, so that it could actually use the opened port. You're right. You're probably right. You're definitely right. That's it. Let's just say that's that's the solution. But I am. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk and tell the people what we're going to do. I'm going to tell them how to start this thing up, and then we'll cut. Kill all the Docker containers, run it locally, and then get into the React coding. Yeah. I've looked at Podman before. It does seem interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, nobody used it. I've heard of it, just never used it. It was 2 containers. It was 2 containers. Okay. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna remove that directory entirely. Apparently there's a lot in there. What do I think about Fleet? Oh, I've only heard bad things about it, but mainly because it's so new and it's not ready for prime time yet. So I'm not even gonna try it until it's like official release. Cool. That directory is gone. Here we go into tutorial mode. I'm going to tell people how to start this stuff up. Yeah, that's a funny analogy, because isn't it that like Cyberpunk is actually good now? Like it took a while, they fixed all the bugs, but like so many people are actually playing it and it's actually making money now. Isn't that a thing? But when it first came out, people did not. Okay. All right, let's do a YouTube intro, and I'm gonna hide the chat. This is something that I have actually never done. Well, I did it when I was recording Feathers tutorials. I watched the first episode. Well, I watched the first half of the first episode of the anime. It was really good. I definitely want to go back and finish it. But yeah, I'll hide the chat while I do this intro. Then I'll bring the chat back. Also, so this is I am going to be in tutorial mode in that like I'm teaching. But when I pause, I'm more than happy to answer any questions about something that I did or whatever else. So we're gonna go into focus mode. I'm actually going to hide. It feels weird. I'm hiding the chat. But let's do a YouTube intro. Hello, friends. Welcome to Coding Garden. In this video, we are going to build a React client. I'm gonna have. Give me a second. I need a README that has like all the tech we're gonna be using and stuff. Because there's a lot of tech, so it's yeah, that's basically the same to do that we did with Vue, but with React. I think this is basically it. There was a faster way to do this, but anyways. And we're actually using Material UI for this. React, TypeScript. Well, I guess not. I remember when I did the initial setup, I set it up for like tests and stuff, but we're actually not going to write tests today. We're going to build the app, and then I'm actually going to have a separate tutorial where we write tests. Cool. We've got that. Let's get that, and then a React query or TanStack query. And Agro Raw, thank you very much for the resub. Are you making calls to a backend CRUD API? Yes, that's the plan. That's what we're going to do. We're going to build a React app that is making calls to an API. And you're about to get the full YouTube intro. I do too, Ryan. That's great that you can set yours to British Columbia. That's what BC is, isn't it? Yeah, the reason I'm not going to add React hook form is because the forms that we have are very basic, like only one input field. So, yeah. I have not tried the T3 stack, but I have tried. I've tried TRPC, and I've been working on an app that's SvelteKit in TRPC. So that's a thing. I haven't used Prisma with Svelte or SvelteKit, but I was working on another app with Prisma, so that's a thing. Yeah, hopefully I can clear up some of the confusions about hooks, Moshiko. But yeah, and what's up, Daddy Ray? What do I think about a switching JSON? Okay, you have a 20,000 line JSON and you want to switch to like Mongo. You could also look into any of the flat file databases. So there's one called KneeDB. I don't know if you're already using this, and this is why it's 20,000 lines, but KneeDB basically writes everything to a JSON file, but it has a nice API for doing it. It has like insert and find, that kind of thing. And then there's also lowdb, which is a similar thing, but different library. And then some people are suggesting don't even use JSON, use SQLite. The issue with SQLite is you're going to need a SQLite driver, and you will have to write SQL queries, which is different than having like a JSON API, but like technically you could do that as well. I mean, I would recommend connects to talk to your SQL or your SQLite database if you go that route. But yeah, the issue with switching to Mongo is you'll need to get it, like you'll have to get a hosted one from MongoDB Atlas or something like that, depending on where your code is running or your app is running, or you need to run Mongo on the machine that your code is running on. But yeah, we're going to talk about React Query as well. Cool. Yeah. Cool. I probably should just do like a standalone video on React hook form, because I've used it extensively. It's really nice. Okay, here we go. Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden. I'm CJ, and in this video we are going to build a CRUD client with React, TypeScript, and React Query. CRUD stands for Create, Read, Update, Delete, and this is a video in a series where we've been working with TypeScript. So if you check out on the YouTube channel, we have an intro to TypeScript video where I talked about all the basics of TypeScript. I'm running out of breath for some reason. I need to take a breath. Take a breath. This video is a video in a series of videos where we've been talking about TypeScript. So we had an intro to TypeScript video where we talk about the basics and essentially give you a crash course in all the kinds of TypeScript things you're going to see in the first TypeScript app that you work on. We then built a CRUD API with TypeScript, Express, and MongoDB. And that is the API that we're going to be interfacing with today in the React client that we build. And then we also did an episode where we set up a React app to have all of the developer tooling that I like to use. So we set it up with Vite. It has ESLint, Prettier, and all the things that I like to have in my base React app. So we're actually going to be using this setup when we create this client. The API that we're talking to does a create, read, update, delete for to-dos. That is like a to-do list, things that you need to do, things that you need to do. But they're all stored in a Mongo database, and you can interact with it through an API. So all of this code is in this repo called Intro to TypeScript on the Coding Garden GitHub organization. And if you would like to follow along with this video, you can actually pull this repo down and I'll show you how to start the API, because all of the code that we write today is going to be talking to that API. So I'll show you how to pull it down, start it up, so that way we can actually write some React code that's talking to that API. I keep pausing. All of this is going to be edited out. Okay. I think honestly, like, hiding the chat is almost like added pressure, because I'm like, it's like I'm performing. I guess I'm always performing anyways. I don't know. So if you'd like to follow along, clone this repo. So go over here on GitHub, grab the clone URL, and then in your terminal, do a git clone of the repo. Once you've cloned it down, ooh, did not mean to do that. So if you want to follow along, you can clone the Git repo. So just copy the clone URL, and then in your terminal, make sure you're in a good place, like your project folder or something like that, and then do git clone with the URL. That will bring this repo down. Now cd into that directory, and we're going to switch to the examples branch because the examples branch has the API code on it, so that way we can start it up. So if I do git checkout examples, that'll switch me to the examples branch. And then if we list the files, there's a folder called examples that has the API inside of it. So if we cd into the examples folder, there should be a folder here called Express API. Cd into that Express API folder. And now we can start it up. So I have this project configured to work with Docker. So if you have Docker running on your machine, that's pretty much all you need. Make sure Docker is running. And then inside of this folder, type docker compose up. And that will start the Mongo database and start the backend API. I guess it won't. We need to create a .env. Though I think the env sample is exactly what we need. Yeah, it is. So we can just copy that. So now that you're in the Express API folder, we can do a little bit of setup and start this thing up with Docker. The first thing we need to do is to create a .env file. So in this folder, there is a .env.sample file. Essentially, all we need to do is to copy that file into a .env file. So if I do copy .env.sample into a file named .env, now I have a file that has all of the defaults that will work with Docker. Now, make sure that Docker is running on your machine, and then in this folder, type docker compose up, and that will start up the MongoDB database, and it will also start up the Express API. When it's ready, you should see listening on port 5000. We'll wait for it. There we go. It says listening on port 5000. And if you visit that in your web browser, you should see this response from the home route. And if you go to /API/v1/todos, you will see, in this case, an empty response. But as long as you don't see an error, then that means it's actually working. This is actually just responding with an empty array because there's nothing in the database yet. But if you can do that, everything is started up, and you are ready to start writing your React app. We're essentially going to be making API requests to this URL. So you need to make sure that that is running in the background before we can write the React code. Great. Cut. Ship it. That was it. That was it. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stop Docker, and I'm going to start this differently. For those of you that are following along at home, just leave Docker running. I'm going to stop it because my fans spin up, and I don't want the fans to be heard on my microphone. So yeah. I mean, I guess technically I could turn it into a template, but it has a lot of extra code in it. The React app that we're going to build does have a template we're going to clone down, but okay, I killed Docker. Docker's not running. Great. Now, actually, I'll put this in the tutorial as well. Yeah, thank you, Drills. I think that's a good point. I don't know why I'm all in my head for whatever reason. But yeah, I think I can show people how to start this up locally without Docker if they don't want to use Docker. But we would need to change the Mongo host. That's it. Yeah. So yeah, let me run that through a tutorial as well. So now, I don't know what past CJ said, but I'm actually going to show you how to start this up how to start up the API on your machine without Docker if you don't have Docker. The one caveat is you will need to have MongoDB installed locally. And so I'm on a Mac, and I actually have MongoDB Community Edition installed through Brew. So if I do brew services list, you can see that I have MongoDB-community installed. And I'll put a link in the description on how to install this on a Mac if you have a Mac. But I'm gonna run this locally instead of inside of Docker. So the first thing I need to do is say brew services start MongoDB community, and that's just gonna start MongoDB. So now MongoDB is running on my machine behind the scenes. Now in this folder, I need to install dependencies. So if I do an npm install, That's going to install all of the dependencies I need for my Express app. We're going to need to make one change to the .env that we copied earlier. So if you open this folder up in VS Code, take a look at that .env. The one change is instead of Mongo host being Mongo, set this to localhost, because now we'll be talking to the MongoDB on our machine. Cool. And now if I do npm run dev, it should connect to the local MongoDB. Let's see. I hesitate because I actually don't know if the our connection string auth source admin, I actually don't know if this works with locally installed Mongo. Let's see. So let's try visiting it in our browser again. So localhost 5000 is good, but if I can go to localhost API v1 to-dos, cool. Let's do this. I'm gonna update the code here. Yeah. I mean, that was the error message that I was expecting. So let me just fix it. Okay, if I do we'll have a variable called query. Yeah, I mean, the issue is when it's running locally, it just uses my... I guess it... Oh, no, no, you're totally right, Xerus. That user doesn't even exist in my local one. Okay, so actually, if I create... There should be a command to... there should be a command to create this user with this password. Let's figure out how to do that. Enable access control? Oh no, is this going to be harder than I thought? Might be easier to use Mongo Atlas. That's probably why a lot of people do that. Like honestly, it's easier to have a local MongoDB that doesn't even require authentication, but because my code is set up to talk to the Docker Mongo, things get a little more complicated. But yeah, my fans on my computer are taking off anyways, so it's like it's all for naught. It'd be better to issue an init script. Yeah, but I think like that's the whole point of Docker, really, is like you don't even need to install stuff locally. Literally spin up Docker and it's good. Honestly, I don't want to create a user. I want a... I'm going to add another environment variable that's like Mongo local. And if Mongo local, else. And then the connection string just becomes so much easier if you're doing it locally. It's literally no username, no password, just connect, just like that. Drills, you're not being ignored. I'm trying to figure stuff out. All right, what did you say though, Drills? Below the overlay? What's below there? Please read above for tips and pointers. Oh, I like this idea. I do. Yeah, so actually what we could do is like once I get going, I mean, I guess I could decrease the font size, but I could almost have like the... That's actually a great point. I can have the the to-dos behind me. Or it's free real estate. We could full screen the code. I don't think I've ever done a code video where the code is full screen. I mean, I kind of like this because then we don't have to do like weird line wraps and stuff like that. And I can like point at the code. Look at me pointing at the code. But you make a good point, Drills. You make a good point. Yeah, we could Sovak, but I mean, technically, I don't have a Linux machine running right now. I do have my gaming machine, which I could run from there, but then it wouldn't be localhost 5000 anymore. Like, so the whole dilemma here is what I am showing in the YouTube video, I want people to be able to do the exact same thing. And I think it's a bit more to ask if I say, oh, well, go start up Docker on your Linux machine or something like that. You see what I'm saying? I don't know. Let's see if this works. Yeah, the only issue with using my gaming machine is then instead of localhost, I'm talking to, yeah, and now it works. Okay, this is the solution. I'm not going to do any weird like auth stuff. I'm going to literally tell them to put that in the .env. And then I'm going to commit this code. Add option for local MongoDB. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, Killer, is like, this would take more time, though. It would take some back-end work, but I could basically make it so that the API allows you to pass in like an auth or a unique user token, and then all of the responses and everything are tied to that user token. Like basically like a really simple form of auth. But yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I know. If you're a little bit late, I already showed people how to use Docker. and the idea is ideally people will just be using Docker, but I don't want to use Docker because it makes my machine too loud. Okay. Yeah, to-dos as a service. I actually had that idea a long time ago, like a to-do app, a to-do API as a service. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I guess you're right, Sovak. I could technically, if I had Docker running over there, I could have a proxy, an SSH tunnel running on this machine. We need to write some React code, so let's just keep moving here, because now I need this to look exactly like this, and then I can instruct people from there. So now that we have MongoDB running locally, we need to update the .env so that we're talking to our local MongoDB instead. So at this point, you should have copied .env.sample into this .env file. The first change is Mongo host should be set to localhost. So now it's just talking to Mongo on this machine. And then lastly, you should add a variable called Mongo local and set it to true. And now essentially there's a piece of code that if it sees this environment variable, it knows that it doesn't have to use a username and password to connect to the local MongoDB instance, which is the default whenever you set up MongoDB Community Edition. There's no auth. It'll just automatically connect. So if our .env looks like this now, if I do brew services list, we should see that MongoDB is running. It started. That's good. And now if I do npm run dev, this should start it up, and it should talk to the local MongoDB now. So if we look at it in the browser and try visiting API v1 to-dos, we should get back an empty response. Good to go. As long as we don't see any errors here, that means it is talking to the local MongoDB. Okay. That should be able to save. That should be saved in the edit. Cool. Yeah. No, I mean, no, all I'm saying, Valk, is that I already told them how to start up Docker, but that's at the beginning of the tutorial. The next part of the tutorial was like, all right, if you don't have Docker, this is what you can do. But the beginning of the tutorial already tells them to use Docker. All right, now the second dilemma is that I've already written the code here. And I want to use it as an example. I'm just gonna copy it, the React TS client. I'm gonna copy it up a directory, React CRUD client take 1. Cool. And then now our example code should be in React CRUD client take 1. Yeah. Great. In case we need to go look at it as an example, I think I'm just going to power through with this. But in case we need to look at it as an example, it's there. Cool. Now, at this point, we want them to clone down, or not clone down, we want them to use the React starter that I created, because it has Prettier and ESLint and everything set up for us. So that's when we can run this command. Okay, here we go. So at this point, you should have the API running in the background, and now we can work on the React app that actually talks to that API. Like I mentioned, we created a tutorial on how to set up a React app with Vite and ESLint and Prettier and all of the other dev tools that I like to use. And so now we can actually run a command that automatically copies that template, and we can start from there. So that way we don't have to worry about any sort of initial configuration. We can just use this template and start coding from there. So if we run this command, npx dgit, the name of the repo, and then the name of the folder that we want to put it into, that will create a folder, clone down the template. So right now I am in the examples folder. So when you do this, there likely will already be a React app in this folder. You can just change the name here. So instead of React TS client, you could call this like my React TS client or something like that. So when I run this command, it's going to clone down that starter, and then we can take a look at the code. So if I go into that folder, open it up in VS Code, okay, I'm going to redo this because right now technically these are Git changes because I deleted the folder. So let me redo this. So I removed it because we're going to recreate it. I didn't want to see like weird unstaged changes on there. And I can close this at this point. So now in the examples folder, we can run this command. If there's already a React TS client in this folder, which there probably will be if you're following this tutorial later on, you can name it whatever you want. So you could call it my React TS client. Essentially, this last piece here is what the folder is the name of the folder that will be created. So run that command. It'll clone down our template. And now we can cd into that directory and open up VS Code or whatever editor you're using. From here, you can see it has all of our basic configs and all of the setup. If you look in the source directory, it's pretty basic. We have our main entry point, and we also have our app along with our wrapped app and everything else. But we do need to install dependencies. That's what it's complaining about right now. So in this folder, do an npm I, and that will install React, React DOM, ESLint, Prettier. All of our dependencies will get installed. Great. And now at this point, VS Code shouldn't complain anymore because we have all of our dependencies. Is there something else I wanted to say? Yeah, let me actually pull up the repo that is the template. this one. And I'll point to that video as well. Now, if you're curious about what these configuration files are and how we set all of this up, I will point you to first the video where we set all of this up. So in that video, I walk through what every single file means and what it does. And then also you can take a look at this GitHub repo, which is the base template. So if you're curious about why a file exists or what it does, be sure to check that out. From here, we're just going to be working within this repo. So we're not going to really dive into what all of these configs do. We're just going to be working within the app. Cool. Cool. All right. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up Material UI. So if you take a look at MUI.com, Material UI is a component library for React. I don't like that it flashed like that. I want it to be dark mode. So the first thing we'll do is we'll set up Material UI. So if you go to MUI.com, you can take a look. This is a material design component library for React. And we're going to use this for all of our components and stylings. If I go into the Get Started, this will tell us how we can install it. And I can run the npm install here. So we're going to be installing @MUI material, emotion React, and emotion styled. So Material UI uses a styling framework called Emotion. And we won't really be writing any of our own custom styles, but it does need that dependency so that the library itself can work. So within my React folder, I'm going to run this command, and it's going to install Material UI as a dependency. And then once we have those dependencies, we can set up the rest of the app. So the first thing is we also need our Roboto font. So I'm going to run an install of Roboto. And then we need to import that font. And it says import it in the entry point. If you look in the code base, the entry point is our main.tsx in the source folder. So this is how everything starts right in this file. So right above where we're bringing in this index.css, actually right above where we're bringing in the app, I can import the font. And now we should have that font applied to our app. We're not going to install the icons. I thought we needed a theme provider. All right, cut, break. Don't we need a do we just import the components? I thought we needed like I thought we needed like this. Yeah, CSS baseline I think is the one we wanted. And then also like a let's look at our cheat code just to see what we did last time. So we have the wrapped app. We brought in the theme provider. What did we do for our theme? Ah, we did dark mode. Okay, that makes sense. So we created the theme, and then in our wrapped app, we have the theme provider and the CSS baseline. All right, I can do that. Also, my fans are spinning up, so I'm gonna take a quick break for my computer to cool down. Yeah, that's my theme right there. But what's up, everybody? This is going swimmingly. I've been live for an hour and a half, and we haven't even written any code. Yeah, no worries, Drills. I was just trying to remember. Like I do remember that we set up CSS baseline and we set up the theme at one point, but I forgot why we even did that. And the reason is we wanted dark theme. So I'm gonna walk through that as well. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, technically you made it in time for all the code. Cool. Why not use code spaces? Because I've literally never done that. I could, yeah. I mean, and it actually would use way less resources because it's all a remote machine and it's all running inside of my web browser. But I don't know. All of the all of the coding I do is all just like local development. So I think we're gonna reach a point where like a remote developer machine is the way that most people code. But yeah. Yeah, if you check out my setup repo, I talk about all the apps I use. Specifically, I'm using iStat menus, and then no, these are actually coming from stats, and then this is coming from iStat menus. But if you look in that Mac setup repo, I talk about the menu bar customization. All right. Anybody that is paying attention, watch this. if the temp of my fan ever gets to I don't know, 180, somebody say something in the chat. Yeah, I could get that SFO if it's over RDP, but it's more so like a development environment on a remote machine that you can access through like a web browser, not like a screen share or something like that. No, it's not Celsius, it's Fahrenheit. No, I can see chat over there. I can see it out of the corner of my eye. So here, I'm going to turn off slow mode. So if it happens, just spam the chat, and I should see it out of the corner of my eye. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, one thing that I have thought of as well is I could literally put my MacBook on the other side of the room and just have like a monitor right here. That's probably what I need to do. No, it's not always this hard. Honestly, I usually don't even put this much thought into it. Like, I mean, the intro to TypeScript one and like all of these were recorded in like a 3 or 4 hour stream, and then I just cut it down. I'm really just in my own head for whatever reason. Why do I keep using React if it's not my personal preference? Because the job world likes React, and people are hiring for React, and the people that go to my YouTube channel are typically trying to learn for their job, so that's why I'm doing React stuff. Okay. Here we go. And thanks everyone for sticking around. I realize that like there's not a lot of chat interaction, but you're still here, and I appreciate you. MacBooks don't have an overheating problem. I have an overheating problem. my MacBook is really old. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think I really ever had this issue before. Also, I used to have the mic way closer to my mouth, and it was actually further away from the from my MacBook. But I like the mic not being in the shot, so that's why my mic is over there, which means it's closer to my MacBook, which means you're going to hear the fans more. Everything's a dilemma. Here we go. Tutorial continues. The next thing we'll do is we will set up the CSS baseline. So this is essentially like a CSS reset, but Material UI provides a component that we can add in, and it automatically adds that CSS baseline. So I'm going to copy this line for the CSS baseline import, and I'm actually going to go into app.tsx. So the way this is set up is we have our main app, which has like our React router with all of the routes, but we also have this thing called the wrapped app. And so like as we add dependencies like Material UI and React Query, they typically have provider components that we're going to need to wrap our app in. And so that's where all of this stuff is going to go. So if I pull in this import here, CSS baseline, and then I need to just put CSS baseline there. Now we've essentially added the reset to the app. The next thing I'll do for setup is to set up a theme. I really like dark mode. You can see that the Material UI docs are in dark mode. So we're going to set up dark mode. If we go into customization and then theming, we can see how to set up a theme. I'm just pausing because it's like, all right, create theme, but where does create theme come from? Create theme comes from material, MUI material / styles, and then dark mode. That's actually exactly what I want. Okay, let's do that again because then I can point directly to the docs. So now we're going to set up a dark theme. You can see that the Material UI docs are in have a dark theme, and I like to set that up as well. So if we go into customization, there's a section on dark mode. They show you how to do that. We essentially need to define a theme, and then we can load that theme through our theme provider. So I'm going to copy the theme import, and in the source directory, I'm going to create a file called theme.ts. Now, technically, I could define the theme in the app.tsx file, but typically, as your app grows, you'll want to add more and more to the theme. So it makes sense to put it in its own file and then import it where it's needed. So I'm going to import create theme there. And then we're just going to have our basic dark theme. That's going to be the default export. So I'll just say export default create theme. So we now have a dark theme. Now I need to import this theme and then pass it to the theme provider. So if we go to our app.tsx, I'll need to import theme provider in this file. So we'll do that here. And then we need to wrap our app and CSS baseline in the theme provider. So right here, we'll create an instance of the theme provider and then make sure that both these CSS baseline and app are inside of it. And then we need to pass the theme into theme provider. That's why it's complaining right now. It doesn't have a theme. So we'll import that theme from the file that we just defined it in. So import theme from theme, like that. And then I can pass that down to the provider. So if I say theme equals theme, now we've provided the dark theme, and now any components that I use will have that dark theme applied to them. Great. Cut, pause. Yeah. This is where you use Copilot for import code. Yeah, like technically, you could even do it without Copilot. So if I don't do that, VS Code actually is smart enough. If you do command period, add the import. But there's so, for whatever reason, there's so many options for places that I could import it from. That's why I just copy it from the docs, because I want to make sure that I'm importing the right one. But yeah, that's the thing. Okay. I'm trying to remember if we set up a layout. Like a container class. Let's look at our cheat codes. So we've got our theme provider. That's where we're at right now. We've got our app. Our app uses, a box for the toolbar, and then it uses a container around the routes. Cool. So we'll do that. We'll set up the nav bar. We'll set up the container. That's the next thing. Let's find that navbar component. Is it called like app bar or something like that? Yeah. Are there not any other mods here? Huh. Huh. Can the mic go on the other side of my face? Yeah, it could. Honestly, I should probably set that up. The only thing is, if the mic is on this side, then it technically like gets in the way of the monitor. I might set that up. Let me find this. What even is this navbar? Oh, it's app bar. App bar. What's the preferred image resolution? I think the maximum height of the window is like 200 or 300 pixels. App bar. What an awful, confusing name. I can't even find it in the doc. There it is. There it is. Okay. All right. Back to the codes. So at this point, we have our theme, we have our CSS baseline. Let's just start up the app, make sure everything runs, and then we're going to add like a basic layout where everything is going to exist within. So in our terminal, if we do npm run dev, that will start up our Vite dev server. And if we visit this URL in the browser, we should see hello world, which is good. And you can see that it has a dark background, which means that the theme provider that we set up is working correctly. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add a navbar at the top of the page. So within Material UI, there's this component called app bar, and that's essentially what I want. So if we look at their example on how to do it, they put it within this box component. Material UI has various layout components that provide things like flexbox, so that when we put that app bar, it stretches across the whole width of the page. So really, I kind of just want to copy all of this. So I'm going to copy that, and then we're going to throw it above our routes in app.tsx. So first thing is I'll put a React fragment, so that way we can have multiple components here. And then I will put the box component in here. Now, all of this stuff needs to be imported, and it's all like broken right now. But let's just fix the indentation. Cool. And now let's add those imports. So in their example, they're importing all of these things. I don't think I want a button. I really just want the toolbar, the box, and the app bar. So I'm going to copy those imports. Those are going to go, make sure I copy those imports. Those will go here. I copy these imports. Those go there. And then I'm going to get rid of the button. And really all I want is I just want this to say React CRUD client, like that. And we should be good to go. So now it's just a box with an app bar and a toolbar, and then this typography component that says React CRUD client inside of it. So if we look back at our app, that's what I like to see. It just has the toolbar up at the top. Awesome. The next thing that I want to do is I want to add a container component around my routes so that there's a little bit of padding on the edges for all of the pages that get loaded there into the routes. So if we look in the Material UI docs, there's this component called container, and that's what I want. You can see that it basically adds like a max width and some padding on the edges. So if we look at their example code, I'm going to add this. So we're going to surround. I copy this, and then paste that here, and then put the routes inside of it. Now, I do need to add the import, and I'll import it from there. So a quick note on imports. You'll notice that I'm importing, I have all of these separate imports instead of importing everything from just /material. And I'm doing that for good reason. If you import these separately, whenever the app is built and bundled, only these components will be included in your bundle. Instead of, if you were to import from here, it's possible that it'll include components that you're not even using. So I do like to import all of these separately. So we have the container, max width, small. Let's see what that looks like. I'll give that a save. And yeah, that looks good to me. So essentially there's a little bit of padding here. If we look at the inspector, we can actually see how big the container is. Yeah, that looks good to me. Once we start adding content, everything will be within that box. Whew. Whew. I think we're at the point where we actually write some code. Oh no, we're going to set up React Query next. So now that we have our layout set up, we have Material UI configured, we are now going to set up React Query. So React Query will allow us to make API requests to our API, and it will manage all of the state associated with that. So if you take a look at tanstack.com/query, that's actually another point. The React Query is now known as Tanstack Query, but at least right now during the name transition, it's kind of interchangeable. So if you hear someone say React Query or Tanstack Query, they're talking about the same thing. But ultimately, what this gives us is state management around our asynchronous function calls. So when we make an API request, that is an asynchronous request. It doesn't complete immediately. We need to wait for it to come back. And there's lots of things that happen there. So first of all, we typically have some sort of loading state. So we want to set like loading to true while we're waiting for that API request. And then when the API request is complete, we'll actually get some data back. If for whatever reason there was an error in the API request, we need to handle that error as well. And then also if there are multiple pages in our app that use the same data, that would require some work as well to share data between components that are talking to the same API endpoints. Tanstack Query handles all of that for us. So that's what we're going to use. Let's take a look at the setup and installation. We're just going to do an npm install of @tanstack/React Query. I'm going to go ahead and open a new tab. You can leave the React app running in the background. Open up a new tab and then just install React Query in that directory. Cool. So now we should have access to it. And then we need to set up our query client provider. So I'm going to copy these imports. Well, no, so you don't want that. Really just want the query client. And yeah, I'll just copy this. So now we need to set up the query client and query client provider inside of our app. I'll copy this line of code, and right here inside of the app component, I'll actually do it down here because the query client provider is going to wrap everything just like this theme provider wrapped it. So I'm going to create an instance of query client. If you do command period or control period, VS Code should autocomplete the import for you. And then we'll have that import there. So now we have an instance of the query client, and then we also need the query client provider. So if I do that right here, query client provider, like that, and then wrap everything in that. Right now, it did an auto import for me, so it is importing it, but it is complaining because it needs a query client. If we look back at their docs, it has a prop called client, and then you pass in the query client. So I'll say client equals query client. And so we're now passing in that query client. Good to go. And now what that allows us to do is in any one of our components, if we want to use React Query, we can pull in the use query hook and we'll get access to it. And because our entire app is wrapped in the provider, any two components that are using the same query will share that data. Yeah, and I see some people in the chat. Welcome in, peoples. Glad to have you here. Where does bun fit into all of this? It doesn't. We don't talk about bun. I mean, technically, so right now, if you look at the package, I know you're joking at Limeotes, but I'm gonna entertain your question, because if you look at the package.json, technically, we're running the Vite command, and then Vite. I think at some point Vite would actually just call node, like node. I don't know. I regret my joke. Yeah, I thought when we looked at the package.json we would see node and then the name of the thing, but we're not. We're just calling Vite, and I think Vite calls node under the hood. I don't know. Stanislaw, thank you very much for the 2 months. I know somebody with the last name Stanislaw. I don't know if you're the person that I know, but if you are, hello. Glad to see you. Thanks for being here. And what's up, boss? Welcome in. When I come back, can I explain why it's important to import typo from UI typo instead of... Yeah. Okay. I'm actually going to confirm this because this may not be the case anymore. But it used to be that if you did not import in that way, Webpack or whatever your build tool is would not know how to tree shake away the things that you don't import. Let's see. Actually, if we look at usage. Yeah, okay, I don't know how to find it in the docs, but let me show you what I'm talking about. So, for instance, over here, technically, I can import container from @MUI/material, like that. Cool, that works. And what that means is, okay, so now that I'm doing that, I also could import all of those other things from it as well, like typography and toolbar and everything else. My understanding is, and I actually don't have a way to confirm this right now, but my understanding is because I have this full import that I am then, I don't think this is even a named import. I think at this point it's like it's destructuring. Let's actually see. Let's see how this thing is defined. And if I look for like typography, I mean, it is exporting typography from there. So technically, yeah, honestly, looking at this now, I think Vite is smart enough to only import that dependency, and I think that's changed from the way that it used to be, because it used to be that if you did this, then it actually would pull in the entire dependency regardless of what you pulled off of it. But looking at the type definition, well, actually, it wouldn't be the type definition; it would be the actual source code, and it's possible that the source code is different than the type definition. And it's possible that this import pulls in the full thing and then we're just destructuring it, which would give us everything, so our bundle would be bigger. I don't know. Honestly, I'm going to go with the fact that when you look at their docs and when you look at their examples, they never do that. Every import they do is always an individual component import instead of the like the named import or the destructured one. An older bundler like Webpack would just import the whole thing. Yeah, and we can check later. Try it and see. I don't want to try it because I'm doing other things. Try it and see. Okay. Good to go. Okay, here's the thing. The API is running. Let me close that and that and that and that. So localhost 5000 here. Right now we have an empty array of to-dos, but I think the first thing that I want to implement is get all to-dos. But the issue with that is there are no to-dos in the database yet. So would it be blasphemy if I told someone to run a curl command? Or if the thing is, think about this from a tutorial perspective. Like, all of a sudden I'm telling you, okay, now you need to pull open Postman or Insomnia. I don't think I want to do that. Would it be easier to tell them to just run this curl command to make a post request? Or would it be easier to just say, use the HTTP client of your choice to make a post request so that we have some data to work with? I see. Okay, yeah, so it was an old thing. It was an old thing. I could create a database seed. You're totally right. But then I'd have to go back and talk about that. Yeah, I'm standing result. It would be easiest to make the create functionality first. I think you're right. We'll just do that. We'll do a create one, which we'll get into like form and all of that stuff. We'll do that. But to the point that I was talking about earlier, my knowledge is outdated. So it used to be that when you did this, bundlers weren't smart enough to tree shake it. Tree shake it means is shake off all the things that you don't actually need. And because we could literally import every possible component from this import, like button and text field and typography and container and box and all of the other ones. Tree shaking is, okay, I only imported button and text field, shake away container and box and all the ones that I'm not using. And it used to be that it wasn't smart enough to do that, but now technically it's smart enough to do that. So. But they are saying if you import a named export, your startup times will potentially be slower because the build tool has to parse the entire import versus a single import. So that's another reason for importing only one. Shake it away. A lot of components don't allow that way of importing. For example, drawer. Let's look at it. But also, I'm gonna post a link to this and talk about it because I think I did mention that you should import it that way, but I want to be correct in telling people to do that. Components. Jar. Wow. Jar. Oh, are you saying that you can't import drawer directly from here? Is that what you're saying? I guess I haven't tried, so I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Use SWR for a change? Oh, so instead of SWR, we are using TanStack query, right? I think those are equivalent. Well, somewhat. SWR is state while revalidate. Drawer. Okay, back into it. So, just a quick aside on these imports from Material UI. You can take a look in the Material UI documentation where they talk about minimizing bundle size, making sure that you have fast startup times, and they talk about why instead of importing multiple things from the app.UI/material dependency, importing individual things will ultimately result in faster startup times, and for older bundlers, what do I want to say? So importing this way results in faster startup times, and if you're using an older bundler, like what they say here is Webpack before version 2, it actually wouldn't tree shake away anything that you didn't import, which is why I've always gotten in the habit of importing individually. But if you look at this piece of documentation here, it tells you why this is the preferred way to import instead of importing multiple from app.UI material. And I'll just leave that that documentation there if you want to click on it to learn more. Cool. So now that we have TanStack query set up, we've got the query client, the query client provider. We are now going to first set up our API client. So we're going to basically consolidate all of our API requests into a single file. And then when we are using React Query, we will use that API client. So let's set that up now. So for this, in the source directory, I'm going to create a file called api.ts. And this will essentially export multiple functions, each one of them making that will make API requests. And actually, I want to take a step back and install Axios. Now, what's really nice is I can't see the chat, and I can't see people telling me, why are you installing Axios? I'm just going to install Axios. I mean, I am going to talk about why I install Axios. So now let's set up the API client. And for that, we actually are going to use Axios. Now, I know you could just use fetch, but Axios has really good TypeScript support, and it has built-in error handling and content type negotiation, and it does a lot of automatic parsing and automatic header setting. It does a lot of stuff that fetch doesn't do out of the box, which is why I like to use Axios. So in our React folder, I'm going to do an npm install of Axios in the Alt F4 stream. Thank you very much for the raid. You've caught me. Yeah, you've caught me talking about Axios. and I'm working on a YouTube tutorial right now, so I'm actually going to redo that. But and then we can all argue about why I'm installing Axios right now. Expose. But thank you for the raid. What were you working on? Cool. I'll go out of focus mode just for a second to talk to all the peoples. Do we get a shout out? And thank you for that shout out, Alka. DevOps. Nice. Wait, why didn't focus end work? I won't argue. I'm just disappointed. Is it focus stop? Well, my focus mode is broken, so we can't actually see it. I guess if I just do a refresh, we should be all right. You're building new infrastructure for work deploying front ends to S3 and CloudFront. Nice. I have quite a bit of experience doing the whole S3 distribution to a CloudFront. Oh no, S3 as the source for a CloudFront distribution. I don't know. Well, that's awesome. Welcome in, Raiders. You've arrived at the coding garden. I write a lot of JavaScript. Today we're actually writing a lot of TypeScript, and we are building a CRUD client, so create, read, update, delete. Like over a month ago, I did a tutorial on how to build a CRUD API with Express, TypeScript, and MongoDB. And so that was a pure JSON API, and we are now building a React app that talks to that API. So that's what we're working on right now. At this point, we've basically just done setup. So if you're going to stick around for the tutorial, you might learn a little something. At this point, we have like a basic app. It's got a basic layout with Material UI. We just set up React Query, and now we're about to get into actually writing our API requests. And that's why we were installing Axios. So that's what we're getting into. Glad to have you here, everyone. Thank you for that raid, Alt F4 stream. Oh yeah, and we can do the new. You know what? I need to update my my shout out bot to do the new at shout out thing, because this is really cool, because anyone that is not following the Alt F4 stream should see a little pop up, and you can instantly follow them right now. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna get back into it. And so here I do this thing. Oh, React Query DevTools. Yeah, you're right. Well, we haven't gotten to the point where we're actually making requests yet. Also, What is going on with my Firefox window? Look, I resize it and like it doesn't resize the tabs. What is happening? And also the page doesn't resize. My goodness. Cool. So when we write our first use query, please remind me to install the DevTools. We will get there. It's dead. It's dead, Jim. I found a bug in Firefox. Switch to Internet Explorer. Overflow hidden. Yeah, on the entire Firefox UI. Well, what's nice is, I mean, this is honestly the first time that I've been trying to do a tutorial with like full screen stuff. Usually, like I have like half the screen is chat, but I'm trying to stay somewhat focused. Honestly, it's not. I don't think it's really even working. This is going to end up being just as long as the last time I built this app. All right. Go into focus mode, which also doesn't. Oh, it did work. It did work. Okay. We're going to install Axios. We're going to set up our API client. Here we go. So now that we have React Query set up, we are going to set up our API client. Our API client is essentially just going to be a file that has multiple functions that all make API requests, and then we're going to import those functions into any component that needs to actually make those API requests. I am going to use Axios to make these API requests. Now, you might be saying, why don't you just use fetch? Axios comes with a lot of really nice things. So it has really good TypeScript definitions. It has automatic error handling. It automatically sets headers when we're making requests with a JSON body. It automatically parses the body when we get it back from an API. It does a whole lot of stuff that Fetch doesn't do out of the box, which is why I like to use Axios, and especially the TypeScript support. It does have really good TypeScript support. So now that we have Axios, let's set up our client. So in the source directory, I'm going to create a file called api.ts. And inside of here, I'm going to import Axios from Axios, like that. And then we can create a client instance. So I'll do axios.create, and then we can pass in some options. So what's nice about this is this will give us a client instance that has the same settings across all API requests that we make. And the one setting that I want to set right now is the base URL. So when we set up our API, it is actually running on localhost 5000. So we're going to set up our base URL to be this because every API request we make is going to have that as the base. And actually, we can set the base URL to be this entire URL because every request we make to get all, to get one, to create one, to update one, all of them use this as the base URL. So we're going to set that right there. So now that we have our client, we can use it in the functions that we create. And the first function that I want to create is the create one function. So this is going to make a post request against our backend to actually create a to-do. So I'm going to export a function, an async function called create one. And this will take in a to-do. So a to-do object, which has a content property, which is a string, and a done property, which is a Boolean. That's how we've defined it on our backend anyway. Right now, I'm going to make it the any type, but in a second, I'll show you where we're going to get that type from. This is going to make a post request. So we'll grab the data. We're going to await axios.post. We want to make a post request to /. So because I set this up, and actually I want to do a client.post. Sorry, client.post. But because I set this up where the base URL is this, if I make a post request to /, it's going to make a post request against this URL. And that is what the API is expecting. When you make a post request there, it is expecting to receive a to-do in the body of the request. I'll pass the to-do in right there, and then we will just return data. Now, right now, my linter is complaining because I'm only exporting one function. The next function we're going to work on is find all, so I'm just going to stub that out so my linter stops complaining. So export function find all, like that. Good to go. Now, I want to add some typings in here. So right now, by default, data does have the any type because I haven't told it what the type is that I'm getting back from that post request. But what I can do is you can see in the type parameters, the first one here, that's the any type. That is you're telling it what you get back. So for example, if I just put the type number there, now data has type number. Now, this isn't a number, it is a to-do with ID. And that's what we're getting back. But where does to do with ID come from? It actually comes from my backend code. So let's do this. In the source directory, let's create a folder called types.ts. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the types from my backend into this file so that way I can use them in any other file that might need those types. Now, you might be thinking I'm crazy. Why am I importing backend code? I'm not importing backend code. I'm just importing backend types. So here's what I'm going to do. We'll say import from, go up a directory, go up another directory, and we're going to go into Express API. So if you cloned this template into the same directory that has the Express API, you should be able to do this. We're essentially reaching up 2 directories into Express API, and then within that, within the source directory, and then within API, within to-dos, we do have the to-dos model file, which defines that TypeScript interface. So I am actually going to import to-do with ID from there. Now, one thing I definitely need to add to this is import type. Because if I import the full thing, when I attempt to build my React app, which right now is just completely front-end code, if I were to import that entire object, I would potentially be getting back-end dependencies. But really all I want is the TypeScript definition. So if I simply just import the type, then I don't have to worry about my front-end code importing like a MongoDB dependency and stuff like that. This will simply just import the type definition, which whenever we build our React app, all of those type definitions get stripped away anyways. So that's why I am able to do this. Now, I'm getting a linter error here, and it says it wants to use this relative import. And if I had a mono repo setup with like turbo repo or Lerna or something like that, this could potentially work. But because I don't have that set up, I actually do need a relative import. So I want to ignore this for that line. Great. And actually, I didn't even want to import. I wanted to export. So export the type from there. Cool. Yeah, and then right now it's complaining because it's saying, well, you're only exporting one thing. It should be default. Well, I technically also want to export to do because we have 2 different types defined. We have the to do that has the ID property, and then a to do that doesn't have the ID property. So we would use this type when we're sending data to the API, and then use this type when we're getting data back from the API. Now what's it complaining about? Yeah, now at this point, I should be able to run my linter, and everything behaves nicely, except you can see that it replaced that import. So I do, at this point, I am going to have to just manually format this so that I can put that ignore in the right spot. Great. Now this file is ready to go. So we are essentially exporting those 2 types that were defined in our backend code, and now I can use them in my front-end code. And again, this little type keyword right here is important because I'm only importing the type definition. I will say in the real world, the proper way to do this would be with a mono repo in a shared project. So you could, with a mono repo setup, you could have a shared types project where you define these types in the separate project that is not your backend project, and then you import from that project in your front end and your backend. For our purposes, this is good enough. So now that we have those types, I'm going to import them over here in api.ts. So if I do this, I'm going to import from types, and that should be good enough. So now we know that data that we get back is to do with ID. And then I can also specify that the type that should be passed in here should be of type to do. And then I need to make sure that I import that from my types as well. So that looks good there. And then the last thing is I also need to tell it what the error type is. And that is also defined in my backend. So when my backend responds with an error, it responds with an object that has a message property. But I actually have that interface defined in my backend as well. So if I do export type, I believe it's called error response. I honestly should just wait until it gives me autocomplete. But same thing. Go up 2 directories, go into the Express API, go into the source directory, go into the interfaces directory, and then grab error response. Yeah, that should do it. And then actually, I'm going to disable this linter error for the entire file. So now that that is disabled at the top of the file, I only have to do that here. And then why is this complaining? It wants that on that one line. This is actually the default export, so that's one more thing I need to fix. So export default as error response from there. So now I'm taking that default export from that interface file, and I should be able to import that into my API client. Now, again, I have this type keyword here, so I'm only importing the type definition. I'm not importing any actual code. So now that I have error response, we'll import that from here as well. And then I can say, I believe it's the second argument here. But not quite, because error response, if we look at its type, is an object that has a message property. Honestly, if I go here, yeah, so it's an object that extends message response, and if we look at message response, it's an object with a message property. And then this one is an object with a stack property, because when we're not in production, it has a stack property. Regardless, that's the data that would come back in an error response, but we actually need to wrap that in an Axios response, or an Axios error. What do I want to do here? Give me a second. Let me figure this out, and then we're going to rewrite it. Axios error, and then we'll probably have like a type API error, and that's going to be an Axios error of type error response, I think. Like that. Oh, we actually don't define this here. This needs to be defined on the other side when we're using the actual query. So actually, scratch that. I'm going to talk about that in a second when we're actually doing the use query thing. So let me just re-say this. I don't know how I'm going to edit this, so hopefully this will do it. So now that we have those types, instead of the any type here, I can actually say that we are accepting a to-do, and then I just need to import that from our types as well. Great. So now we have our create1 function. We can actually call this from within our component. So we'll go set that up now. Okay, I do see the chat moving, people having questions and stuff. Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of editing to do, it's true. Yeah, so people were asking about monorepos and stuff. Let's see. And Gordon, thank you very much for that sub. I think I missed that. Thank you. Yeah, so monorepos are monorepos are cool. It basically makes it so that if you didn't have this idea of a monorepo and you had a project on your team that you wanted to share between other projects on your team, typically you would need to publish that to like npm, and then you could install it from npm in the various projects that you need it in. Now, if it's a private company and the code isn't open source, you probably don't want to publish that to npm. You could have like a private package hosts where you could put it at, but the easier way to do it is to have a single code base with all of those packages defined, and then these mono repo tools like Turbo Repo and Lerna basically set it up so that when you import, it knows that it doesn't need to do an npm install. It just basically does a relative reference to the same directory structure. If I export all the error response, you can have the object, and it can have the Axios error too. Yeah, I'll have to set that up in a little bit. Yeah. Override the ID on to do with IT from object ID to string. Oh yeah, you're totally right. Can I do that with TypeScript? Can I like this? Let's see. Now can I overwrite it? Can I say like to do with ID is, oh, you know what? I see what you're saying. Don't even import it. Literally just define my own to do with ID that is to do and ID string like that. Can I import it and export it? Can I just do export? How can I import it and export it? Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm gonna redo that whole section. I'm gonna go back and do what you're talking about here. I just need to figure out the right way to do it. Really? And then that exports an individual to-do type? I've never seen that syntax. But yeah. Huh. Huh. That's so easy. Okay, honestly, I'm going to recreate this entire file. And we only import to-do. Yeah. How is versioning of the API happening? Technically, it's happening in the backend code. So if the backend ever comes out with a new version, it would have new endpoints at like /v2. There are various ways to version an API. This API is never going to change. It's always going to be v1. But basically the best practice here is to version it, because eventually you might need a version 2. Yeah. Create a hook and expose the methods on it. With this, I can easily add things like a global loader on the requests. Sure, we're using React Query, which does most of the heavy lifting for us. But yeah, I could see that, creating like your own hook that does all the Axios specific things. Yeah. Yeah, so essentially, if we wanted to version this thing in our backend code, we would create a new router. We would mount it at /v2 instead. And then it would have all of the newer stuff. What's the difference of using types instead of interfaces? They're, for all intents and purposes, they're the same thing. Specifically, when I'm doing that export with the type keyword and import with the type keyword, that tells TypeScript that I'm not trying to import the actual value. And in the case of to do and to do with ID, those are actually to do is a Zod validator. And I am not trying to import the validator. I am just importing the interface that gets generated, essentially. And so by putting that type keyword on there, it only imports the interface. Yeah. Does React get a big change to use async? Not really. In a second, I'll show you how we do it. It's not... it's just not too complicated. It's TypeScript, not interface script. That's funny. That's funny. All right, let's basically redo the entire thing that I just did. but we know better now. Okay. So at this point, I want to actually provide some types to this API request. We can see right now that if I hover over data, it is the any type because I haven't told Axios the type that I'm expecting back from this request. And for instance, if I put a type here, and if you hover over it, you can see that right now it's defined as the any type. But if I put like number right there, then that's basically telling Axios that, hey, I'm expecting to get a number back. We're not expecting a number. We are actually expecting a to-do with an ID. But where does this come from? This actually comes from our backend code. So what I'm going to do now, you might think I'm crazy, but we'll talk through it. So I'm going to create a file called types.ts, and I'm actually going to import types from my backend code. So I'm going to import stuff from, go up a directory, go up another directory, into the Express API. So this code that I'm working on is in the same, it's in this React TS client directory. It's in the same directory as the Express API, which means I can go up a directory, go in there, go into the source directory, and actually pull in some types. So I actually want to pull in the to-do type from the to-dos model. Now, it is important that I put the type keyword right here because this is back-end code. There's a lot of things in there that are not compatible with my front-end code. So I want to be sure that I'm telling the TypeScript compiler that I only want to import the type. I only want to import the interface. I don't want to import the actual thing. And so by doing this, this is totally fine. Even though I'm in my front-end code here, because I'm only importing the type, I can use it in my front-end code. There's another thing that my linter is yelling about. It is saying it wants to replace this relative import with the name of the folder. And the issue is I don't have any sort of mono repo set up. So I can't do this. The real proper way to do this would be to set up a mono repo project where I have my front end, my back end, and then shared code. And I could put all of my interfaces and shared types in that shared code project. But I'm not doing that, and I want to keep it as a relative import. So I'm actually going to do command period or control period if you're on Windows. And I'm going to say, disable that linter rule for this entire file. So now it won't yell at me for that. I can import that type. And this is OK to do, like I said, as long as you have that type keyword there. Great. So the to-do type is pretty simple. It just has two properties. Content is a string and done is a Boolean. But I also want a type called to-do with ID. Now, technically, I do have to-do with ID defined in my backend code, but the ID type is object ID. And object ID actually does come from MongoDB. And that is backend code in a backend type. And in reality, when I get that ID back from the API, it is just a string. So I'm actually going to define my own type. So we're going to export a type called to-do with ID. And this is going to be equal to to-do. So it's the to-do type. And it has an ID property, which is a string. And actually, it's underscore ID because we're dealing with MongoDB. So I have now defined a new union type. This is a type that's a combination of the to-do type with those two properties, content and done, and also this new underscore ID property, which is of type string. Because when I'm dealing with my front-end code, ID is always a string. It's never an object ID. So that's good. And then I also want to export the to-do type. So if I just do export to-do like that, good to go. So now we have our types defined here. I can import them into my API file. So right here, if I do command period, yes, I do want to import it from types. And then now I can type the thing that I'm accepting into this function. So instead of the any type, I can make it the to-do type and import that from our types as well. So now we have a wonderfully typed create one function. And now we can actually use this in our component to make the API request to create a to-do. Whew. That was better, right? That was better. That was better than last time. You might think I'm crazy. React just got a request for comment for use hook? What do you mean by that? Do I have any opinions on DynamoDB? Yeah, never worked with it. No opinions there. And what's up, Askray Live? Welcome in. What are you doing, Pogany Bart? What are you doing? Please stop. Oh, it's Polish? I was like, wait. Is this real? There's no way this is real words. Like, no offense, but this just, as someone that speaks English, Um, this is real words. Oh my god. Hello. Pogo DNY. We only speak English here, though, just so it's easier to mod. I had no idea that was Polish. That literally looks like you're smashing on the keyboard. No offense. No offense. Cool. Huh. No, come on. So for those of you that only speak English, doesn't it look like they just smashed on the keyboard? Is it missing like accents or anything like that, or is Polish written that way, or does Polish actually also have like oh yeah, they're cursing at me. Regardless, it's fine. It's not TOS or anything like that. Is this how Polish is written, or do they have like is it like Cyrillic, or do they have other characters that they use? so I'm allowed to bash them because they called me a name. It's written that way. They're just pronouncing the words in English letters. It's the same thing you can do with Russian. Okay, yeah, I've never seen that done with Russian either. But I don't know if they got banned or whatever. We only speak English here. I'm not answering the chat because I'm recording this for a tutorial. So that's why. Okay. Slavic, not Cyrillic. Cool. What's up, Chad? Welcome in. First class support for like async await on suspense. Huh. Yeah, honestly, like, they're the rude one. It doesn't matter. It's hilarious to me that I left that on the screen for so long. I didn't even know that they were calling me a name. Yeah, feel free to ask a question right now while I'm paused. Oh, it's literally just called use. I thought it was like use hook. Oh! That's funny that they have a typo, but regardless, that's okay. And then it like automatically resolves behind the scenes. That's awesome. I haven't planned the After Dark stream. Compst. Yeah, I haven't planned. I want to do it. I just I'm honestly, I need to launch my course, and that takes priority over planning the other stuff. I'm developing an image upload server in Node. Middleware is 100 milliseconds, but over HTTPS in 5 seconds. What gives? Honestly, I don't know. I'd have to see like some server logs, or maybe see how you set up the code. But yeah, I mean, it is possible that like HTTPS is technically overhead. Like the fact that the request needs to be decrypted, that's going to take longer than HTTP. But yeah. So yeah, I don't have a good suggestion for you. I mean, if you feel like posting in our Discord, you could maybe like give a code example. But yeah, it shouldn't take 5 seconds. You're right. Yeah. I don't have any thoughts right now, but yeah. No, it's still going to be streaming, technically. It's not going to be like... Yeah, it should still stream in the same way. Don't know. But we have a help forum in our Discord, which we might be able to help you out. But yeah, this looks cool. I also don't know much about React Suspense. I think I saw somebody mention that. Don't know much about it. But let's keep coding. So we're here. Now, see, the tricky part is now we need to build out the form. we need a bunch of stuff. There's a bit more code to write at this point. But we're definitely going to bring up the React query docs. Because we want to use a query for create to do. Oh, but that's the issue. It's a mutation, not a It's not a query. It's a mutation. Well, that's fine. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the home page. The home page will actually load a new to-do form. We will then create a new to-do component, which has the form inside of it. That's the plan. All right, we're gonna wing it, see what happens. So now I want to create a new to-do form that will essentially call this function. So in the source directory, I'm going to create a folder called components, and inside of here, I'm going to create a component called new to-do form. And this is going to be a React component that actually has the form. It has the loading state, all of that good stuff. So we're going to export a function, new to do form. And we'll export this default, because this is the only thing we're exporting. And for now, we're just going to return just a div that says new to do form. Like that. And then on our home page, we're going to import this component in. So right here, instead of hello world, we're going to have the new to do form that imports from there. Great. And then I'll run my linter. That looks good to me. This is yelling because it wants it on one line. I'll run my linter. That seems good to go as well. So if we look at our app, now we have new to-do form. Good to go. Let's look at the Material UI docs. We essentially want like a form and a text field. So if we look at Material UI, where is it? Here it is. If we look at Material UI, we can look at their text field component. And this will essentially allow us to have some input. And I think I will use the outlined component. We can see that I'm curious if it has 100% width by default. Like this. How did they do that amount? Here. Form control, full width. That's what we want. Okay. Do they show that in these earlier examples? They don't. Okay. Okay. So we want a text field. So I'm at the text field here in the Material UI docs. I specifically want a text field that takes up the full width of the component. And I can see in their example here where they have this like amount box, they actually wrap that in a component called form control with the full width property. So I'm actually going to copy that. And then we'll import everything we need. So this new to do form will actually have a form inside of it, and then inside of that form we're going to have a form control. Let me make sure I'm copying the right thing. That copied everything. That is not what I want. I'm going to right click this and just go to copy to make sure that it's just the piece that I want. Better. Yeah, that's all I want. And then now we can pull in these imports from Material UI. So I specifically want app UI/material/form control, and then similarly I want that one, and then similarly I want that one, and then we don't need any of this input adornment stuff. Should be good. I'm going to run my linter. And then we have our label, which is going to be new to do. And then we're going to give the new to do an ID of new to do. And this is essentially an input component. This is there's a lot of extra stuff that we can add on here, but we can treat it just like an input. So we can say like type is text, And name is, in this case, we'll just say new to do. And that should be good. So now if we look at our page, we have ourselves a little form. This is awesome. So in here, I want to say something like learn TypeScript. And then I want to click add. That should send it to our API. And then eventually we'll see it listed below. So now below that, I want a button. Let's take a look at the Material UI docs and grab ourselves a button. Outline button looks good to me. Let's do this one. So this button will say add to do. And then I want to import this from Material UI button. I want the button to be on the right. I always like my UI to flow, at least in English, which is a left to right language. I like the UI to flow left to right, so I actually want the add to do button to be on the far right. For that, I'm going to use a flexbox. And I do believe if we look in the layout components, they have a box component. And then we should be able to tell it to justify content flex end, something like that. So we're going to wrap this button in a box like that. And then we'll import it from there. Good. And then does it have a prop like justify? Let's see. Yeah, it does. So justify content flex end. I think that will work. Let's see. I'm going to look at the element inspector just to see what we really got here. So we do have ourselves a box. And the box, does it have display flex? I think I might also need the flex property as well. Flex row. Let's see. I'm going to go to the docs. How do I do this? Oh, my temperature? I mean, it's like 170. And thank you for spamming the chat. I mean, it started going down. You know what it is? Once I start doing like autocomplete and stuff, that really gets it going. But thank you for letting me know, Drills. Okay, I'm gonna go to my cheat code because like I totally forgot how all of this works. Components form. Wow, we're about to write all of this code. Oh, we use the grid component. Forgot about that. That's better. I like that. I like that better. Cool. So grid, container, justify content, flex end. Cool. It is, I mean, it's fluctuating. It's like 160, 170, 180. Yeah. Where is the grid component? It's there. Okay. Remind me later. I'll tab. So now I actually want this button to be on the far right. English is a left to right language, so typically I like things to flow from left to right. So when a user enters in something here, to me it makes sense that the button should be on the right for them to click on. So for that, we're going to use a flexbox, and we'll use the grid component inside of Material UI. So we want ourselves a grid that is a container, and then it should have some props on it that allow us to, I really don't like, so I'm, you've seen this happen multiple times. If I press Command C, I only want to copy that one section. It copies literally everything. So if I right click copy, I only get the piece that I want, which is unfortunate, but that's how I'm going to have to do it. Okay. I want a grid. Let's import this in from there. And then I believe there's like a justify. Yeah, so justify content, and then I can set that to flex end, like that. That should do it. Let's see what we get. Nice, that's what I want to see. So the button is on the far right. I can say like learn TypeScript, click the button, and at that point, make the API request. Though I'm really curious, why didn't that actually submit the form? It should have submitted the form. Yeah, you're right, Windward Hive, and I don't know why. I think the we can figure that out. So the UI form control, it has no padding, no border. Inside of it, that input has a whole lot of spacing. Does the button have padding? Container form. Oh, look at that. The input is like, so the form, the button is contained within the form, but then the input is pushed outside of it. I'm not going to worry about it. it's not worth my time. Okay, so we have our form set up. Now we need to set up our form state, and then also we need a submit handler, so when this button is clicked, it actually calls the API. First of all, let's set up our form state. So I'm going to create a state variable. We're going to call this new to do, and then set new to do, and this will be use state from React, and it will start off as the empty string. So we're now importing use state from React. Now I want to bind this value to the input. So on the input here, I can say value equals that. And then I need to listen for when the input changes so that I can set the underlying state value. So I'm going to say on change. We get a little function that gives our event. So the event is of type react.changeEvent HTML input element. So I'm going to create a function called new to do changed. And then this will take in the event, and it was react.change event of HTML input element, like that. And now E, which is the event, should give us access to the value. So we can say set new to do as E dot current target dot value. They run my linter, which will auto format that. Now we should be good to go. So as I type inside of this input, it's going to call this function. It'll update this state variable. That value will flow back down to the input. And now behind the scenes, we're essentially keeping track of what the user typed into the input. Great. So we're keeping track of that. Now we want a submit handler for the form. So I'm going to make this button type submit. And on the form, I can say on submit. Let's see what this is expecting. So this is E will be, I'm just doing this to get the type. So E is a react.form event of HTML form element. React.form event, react.form event. And so now I want a function. We'll say form submitted. And I'll define that here as well. So this gets in E, which is react.form event of HTML form element, like that. and we want to prevent the default action. So e.prevent default is the first thing we'll do. That just prevents the page from submitting against itself and refreshing, because we're going to handle this at this point with React query. So prevent the default action, and then now call the mutation. So let's set that up now. Why is this complaining? Well, fix that in a little bit. So if we go over to the TanStack query docs, we can see in their main example how to set up mutations. So inside of TanStack query, there's this idea of queries, which are typically like GET requests, and then mutations, which are typically post requests or put requests, patch delete requests, things that would change something on the back end. So specifically right now, we're trying to create a new to-do, so that needs to be a mutation. So I need to grab this use mutation from TanStack query. So right about here, I'm going to say mutation equals use mutation. We'll pull that in. The first argument is the function that we want to call. In this case, we're going to be calling the create1 function that we defined over here. So I'm going to call create1. We'll import that in. So we're importing API. We're importing use mutation. And then for now, that should be it. So right now, we're not going to worry about what happens after completion. We'll still get access to like the loading state and everything else. We are just going to pass that in there. Now, I think actually I do want to destructure this. So now, if we look at mutation, it actually has quite a few properties. It has a loading state, it has an error state, it has like the data or the result of the mutation. So I'm actually going to destructure those. So the one we're looking for is fetching, or is. So the one we're looking for is loading. And so that's going to be a Boolean that's true or false whether or not this API request is happening. The other thing we want is the error. Right now it's an unknown type. I'll show you how we can type it in a second. But ultimately, if when I click submit here, if the API returned an error, we want to display that in the UI somehow. So we want to pull in that error as well. And then we actually don't need the data or like the result of the query. What we want is the function we can call to actually trigger this mutation. And in this case, it is, we're going to use the one called mutate async. So when the form is submitted, I want to say mutate async. You can see that this takes in an object that is that has a property content and a property done, and that's because we passed in create1. So earlier when we created that create1 function, we typed it. We said it accepts an object that is of type to do, and so now all of those types have flowed through, and so this knows that it needs to accept that type. So I need to pass in an object. The content property is going to be our new to-do value, what the user has typed into the form. And the done property will just be false. So our to-dos start off as done, as not done. So when we submit the form, this should actually make the API request. One thing that we want to do is we want to show some loading state. And we should be able to do that on the button. So if we look at the Material UI documentation, I do believe buttons have a loading property, which would allow us to show like a loading spinner if something is happening behind the scenes like this. So let's see how they do that. It's literally called a loading button. So I need to import a loading button instead of button. So I'm going to import a loading button. And actually, it's from lab. Okay. I have to install that separately. Well, so it's a loading button, but you can see that they're actually importing it from UI lab. So this is actually a separate dependency that we need to install. So I am going to now install this dependency. So I'm now going to install this lab dependency here in my React folder. So do an npm install of that. Once I have it, I'll be able to import a loading button from there. So now inside here, instead of pulling in button, I'll add a loading button. And then this comes from @MUI/lab, like that. And then now instead of a regular button, we'll use a loading button. And that specifically has a prop called loading. And we can tie this to the variable that we got back from our use mutation. So this is loading. So right here on the loading button, we'll say loading is loading, like that. I'm going to run my linter. And we should be good to go. I think the other thing I'm going to do is when the user submits the form, I actually want to disable the input because that's a good user experience. Is if they click submit, you don't want them to be able to like edit or change anything. So I do believe there's a disabled, and we're going to set that to isLoading as well. So if isLoading is true, disable the input, show loading on the button, and then if it was all successful, then we'll clear out the form. So that's actually where we can use that on success. So if we look back at the tanstack query docs, you can see that for use mutation, you can pass in some options, and then you can provide an on success function. And so if there was a successful request, we want to clear the form. So here we can say on success, like that. This will be a little function. And right here, we can say set new to do to be the empty string, like that. So, and then that needs to be like that. So if everything was good, if we sent it to the API, they didn't return an error, we're just going to clear out the form. Behind the scenes, it should set isLoading to false. The input will be re-enabled. The loading button won't be a loading button anymore, and then the user could potentially create a new to-do. So that looks good. Lastly, we want to display this error somewhere. So within Material UI, they do have a component called alert, I do believe. Yes, this. And we want to use like this error alert like that. And we'll put that at the top of the form. So if there was an error, we're going to show it here. So we'll say error and this, and then inside of here we'll say error dot response dot message, like this. Now we need to pull in alert from at MUI/material. And then right now we're getting a type error. So this is where we can actually tell the use mutation hook what the type of error response we are expecting. Why is this complaining? Oh, a form has to have a single child? What? What? Am I crazy? Pull the alert out of the form? But why? Why can't I? Why? Oh well, I'll fix it. Okay. So let's actually put the error on top, but in order to do that, we actually do need to a little fragment because we now have the form and the alert as the children there. So we'll save that. And now we can fix this error, which is a type error, because it actually doesn't know what type that error is. So it doesn't know what type of error gets thrown here for use mutation. I'm also going to pull this import there. So let's define that type. Over here in our types file, we can pull in a type known as error response from our backend, just like we pulled in the to-do type. So if I say export type error response, this is going to come from the same place. So go up 2 directories, go into Express API, go into source, go into interfaces, and then there is error response. And it's actually the default export. So I'll say export default as error response. Cool. So this error response type describes an object that has a message property. And then now we need to use this type and wrap it around an Axios error. So we have this type. Now over in our API.ts, we're going to import this as well, but we also need to import an Axios error. So the way Axios works is it essentially, if an error is thrown, it wraps it in an object that has the parsed response body. So we're now going to define a type. So I'll say export type. We'll call this API error. And this is going to be an Axios error of type error response. So error response just describes an object with a message property. Axios error describes a whole lot more in terms of like the response property and the headers and everything else. So now that we have that type, we want to use this type on our use mutation to tell it what type of error might be thrown. So if we go back over to the form, if we hover over use mutation, you can see that right now, well, it's behind me, but to do with ID and then unknown is there. Unknown is that it doesn't know the error type. So we do need to pass in right here to do with ID. And that comes from our types. And then we also want to pass in API error. And that should come from our API. Cool. That looks good to me. Let's run our linter. That's what it's complaining about right now. Cool. Why is this complaining? Do I need to wrap it in a promise? Yeah, the cheat code is on GitHub, but it's not on the latest commit because I actually removed it from the commit. Was it one about mutation key? So here's the thing. If I remove that, it's happy. Is this what it wants? Function, object. Let's look at like typed mutations. Maybe I didn't do the types right. Yeah, I should just go back and look at, I need to look at my cheat code to see what I did there. Use mutation. To do with ID, API. Oh, I need all three types. That's the issue. Okay. And then lastly, we also need to specify the type that we accept, which in this case is a to-do. So we're sending a to-do to the API. It will respond with the to-do with ID. If there's an error, it will throw an API error. And so then we also need to pull in to-do from our types as well. Let's run our linter. Good to go. So now our mutation is all set up. And that ultimately we did to fix this error, which is still complaining for some reason. But we can see that, oh yeah, so it's possibly undefined. That makes sense. So we could say error response message or unknown error. Actually, I guess I could also do error.message because that is a known property. Like that. Cool. So response.data.message. So the way Axios works is if an API request throws an error, it will attempt to, and throws an error in the sense of its status code, it will attempt to parse the response, and that's going to be on the data property. So that's one of the main reasons I want this. But the data property will be an object of type error response that has a message property. And if that exists, we want to use that. So this would be an actual error message defined by the API. If that doesn't exist, then we'll use error.message, which will likely be like a server error or some more generic error message. But that's exactly what we want. Okay, all of this, now let's actually test it. But before we test it, I want to make sure that we can see the loading state, we can see everything happening. So inside of my create1 function, I'm actually just going to await a little sleep function here. So we'll create a promise, and then in 2 seconds, we'll resolve that promise. So that way, it'll make the API request, but we should see the loading state. We should see the disabled input. We should see all of the functionality that we're expecting. And we can really know if it's working. So here we go. Moment of truth. We're going to go to our front end. Let's just clear and refresh. And then now I want to add a new to-do called learn TypeScript. Click add to-do. We see the loading state, we see that it's disabled, and then on success, it actually cleared out the input. So it should have worked. How do I know it worked? For one, we could call the API, but also we could look at the network tab. So if we look at the network tab, we should see that there was a post request. It's behind me. There's a post request against API v1 to-dos. And we can see that we sent over learn TypeScript, and we can see that the server actually responded. The other way that we can check is actually with the React Query DevTools. Now, do I have that installed? I don't, so I'm going to install it now. But React Query comes with their own DevTools, which will actually show you if API requests were made. You can see the cache state, the invalidation state, all of that good stuff. So I'm going to go install the React Query DevTools now, so we can get some more insight into what's happening behind the scenes. Okay. DevTools. Cool. You actually have to install it, and then it should not open in production, right? Right. So in the React Query docs, there's a section called DevTools here. And essentially, you need to install this DevTools dependency, and then we'll add the React Query DevTools below the query client provider. So here, I'm going to install that dependency, and then we're going to grab the React Query DevTools, and we need to import that in our wrapped app. So if I go to our app.tsx, and we go right here. Let's put it below our app. Well, we need to pull the import in here. And then we'll use this component right here. And it does have a prop. Initial is open, and we're going to set that to true so that it actually shows the DevTools when the page loads. Okay, so now that we have that, the dependency is installed, good to go. If we actually look at the app, you can see that when the page loads, we do see these React query dev tools, and we can actually see when things happen. So let's try adding another to do. So if I say learn UI and click add to do. Hey. It's a mutation. Should I see mutations in here? Yep, it's definitely showing. Why not? Come on. Is there something about mutations not showing up in the DevTools? There's an error in the console. Loading dynamically imported module. The DevTools are for queries only? Really? Man. Use fetch. Yeah, I think we eventually got it going, Drills. So last time I actually did define a little function here, but technically we don't need to define a separate function. Yeah, first is the response, second's the error, third is the thing you're sending the request. Yeah, I think I already covered that, right? Maybe you said that before I did it. And I think it will auto disable in production. We'll see. Have I worked on an admin panel with the ability to post posts? Not quite. No. There's an issue? It's not possible. Well, come on! Queries have data and state that are stored in the global cache. Mutations do not have any data or state that is hidden from you. This means just use the network dev tools. I mean, I'm okay with that, but also I have to backtrack a little bit. Because we will install the dev tools when we do a find all or like an actual query. So I'm just going to uninstall that. And then undo what I did over here. Get that out of here. Get that out of here. Cool. And then now the data actually is there. I'm going to open up the I'm going to open up Insomnia. So that I can remove those from the API. And we can get back to there. That chat overlay is way behind. Yeah, I don't know, Floco. Things don't seem to be slow for me. I don't know. So here's what I'm doing. Inside of Insomnia, I'm actually just sending a delete request for both of these things. So that way, for the edited tutorial, there's not any weird data popping up. Cool. That's the only one that I want to see. Cool. And then, I guess I've refreshed since then, but I did show it in the network tab. Dang it, I guess I'll delete let me delete all of them. and then just redo it, because I do just want to show the network tab. And welcome in, Kavari. Yeah, sorry for any new people that have said hello that I haven't been able to acknowledge, but I'm not paying too much attention to chat today while we're working on this thing. Okay. Wow. And then now there should be no to-dos. Good, good. All right, we're gonna redo that. So let's give it a try. So now if I try to create a to-do like learn TypeScript and click add to-do, you can see in the network tab that it actually did make that request. You saw that we saw loading, we saw the input was disabled, and you can see that the API actually responded with a 201 status code, 201 created, and it is there. And if you go back over to where we made the API request, the GET request to API v1 to-dos, we should see it there as well. So we know that it worked, and we can try adding a few more as well. So like learn UI, that sends the post request. Technically it's completed, but we had that fake like 2-second loading state, so we can really see the loading spinner and everything else. So great, we've implemented create. Now we want to be able to list all of them to actually show them below the form. I'm having an existential moment, because it's like, would it be better for me to just do this not on stream? Like, would it actually be any faster if I did it not on stream? Because this is, I mean, yeah, I probably do I need to take a break in general, but I think the main issue is the first time we did this, it took me 6 hours. One of the main reasons that I want to redo it is because we were using Docker last time, and I went back to watch the video. The fan was unbearable. Like, you could hear the fan in the background so much, which is why I wanted to redo it without the fan spinning so much. And welcome in, I'm a Unicorn. We have some other people from Germany here as well. I don't know if they're here right now, but at least in the community. So yeah, one of the main reasons I'm redoing this whole thing is that I don't want the fan spinning in the background. And then the other reason was with Docker and everything else running, all of my autocomplete was like super, super slow. And it kind of is still pretty slow. Like, I don't even know, I don't know how to get around that. Like, the fact that it's taking like 2 seconds, 3 seconds before I even get prop autocomplete is pretty maddening. I'm putting up with it now, but it's almost like I need a faster computer. Yeah, Cyrus. Yeah, sorry if there was any confusion. We're writing the exact same code. I'm just trying to do it without the fan running in the background, and also I wanted my UI, my VS Code to respond a little bit better. Yeah. So control space works, but it also takes a little time. 1.5 Mississippi. Or you can see when I start typing, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, you know. So even, I guess, control space takes about a second. And I guess if I start control space and then I start typing, is that a little bit faster? I can get in the habit of doing that. That is way faster. Huh. Yeah, we spent the first hour of stream figuring out the best way to run my Docker containers and stuff. At the end, right now, I'm not even running a Docker container at all. Yeah. Okay. I've been live for 3 hours. I wanted to be done by now. And what's up, Jamal? Welcome in. Glad to have you. Well, I don't even think a break is gonna help me, because it's like, it's my afternoon now. I need to go spend time with my dog. And what's up, Inachu? Welcome in. What can CRUD clients do? They can, at least what we're building here is it makes a request to a backend API. And the API that we're talking to only responds with JSON data. So you can list all of the data. You can make requests to create new data, make requests to delete data, make requests to update data. But this API here only responds with JSON, like this. So we are building a website that makes requests against this so that users have a nice little UI, so they don't have to know how to make requests directly. Yeah, I think either I think I'm gonna finish this off stream. And I need to figure out a better system. I think ultimately what I'm going to end up doing is my MacBook is going to be across the room, and I'm just going to have a monitor right here, so we don't even have to worry about the fans spinning up. And I guess the other aspect is, like, if we were using like Code Sandbox or something like that, I'm curious how the autocomplete and everything, how fast it would be on there. Yeah. So, and welcome in, Tonic. Lots of new people. Glad to have you. I streamed for 7 hours yesterday. Yeah, it wasn't 12. It was just 7. But, yeah. I've never heard of Neom City. I've never heard of Tracery JSON. Super simple tool and language to generate text. Huh. All right, I think I am going to go, but for anybody that was just joining us, I will point you to where I built this thing before. Now, it is a long VOD. Like the last time we built this thing, I think the VOD was like 6 hours long at least. Right about here. Oh, 7 hours. So, if you're looking for something to do tonight, this was, I guess, well, we can see the date on there. 9/7/2020. Yeah, so this was a little over a month ago, just a little bit over a month ago. Oh yeah, let me look at that pull request. Thank you, Drill. Sorry, I get distracted. Did you make a bunch of examples? Or okay, you updated the README. You reformatted it. Let's see. Nice. You're a nice person, Drills. you put in a lot of work here. File renamed without changes. Oh, because you created an examples folder. I see. Yeah, I'm probably just gonna straight up merge this. As long as you didn't add any, you added a yarn lock. Remove any yarn lock or package lock, and then I'll just merge this because this is awesome. Did you add a yarn lock, or was honestly, I'm just gonna I'll just delete and recreate those files. But this is awesome. This is a really good start, Jules, because now with each of these markdown files, we can also add diagrams. We can deploy the sites and like have screenshots of like the network tools and everything that's happening. This is great. This is fantastic. Thank you for doing all that work. Rename with no changes. I don't. What was this then? Oh, you know what? When I generated the Next.js app, I think it detected that I had yarn installed and used that instead of npm install. So yeah, I mean, I trust you. I mean, you're huge in the community. So, but yeah, thank you for putting that work in. This is awesome. I mean, honestly, like, why doesn't something like this exist? And honestly, what's his name? What's his name? What's his name? Kinsey Dodds. I mean, I think like I think that's what he's trying to do with epicweb.dev. I was so confused last time because I didn't see that Like, I was trying to find that blog post on his main website, Kinsey Dodds, but actually he started a new website, epicweb.dev, and I think it is his goal to teach and describe everything. Very similar like to what I'm trying to do as well. But yeah, this is a great blog post. Check that blog post out. I mean, he has a bunch of really cool diagrams. Wait, did he update this? No. That's the wrong one. Web's Next Trend. This is the one that I wanted to show. Apparently, he added a new blog post, which I haven't read yet. Fully typed web apps. Hey, that's what we're doing right now. Okay. Yeah, his site does look really slick. No, I'm excited for what he's going to put out because he's a great teacher. He's got a lot of really good online content and stuff. It has typos? Come on. All right, I am going to end stream right now. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. This was a weird stream. It was a weird stream. Yeah, so CRUD stands for Create, Read, Update, Delete. Let's see if there's a Wikipedia article on it. Yeah, there it is. Create, Read, Update, Delete. And it really is just a way to describe the way most applications work. Not even just most web apps, most applications. Pretty much any application you are using, you are creating, you are reading, you are updating, and you are deleting. In that, specifically, we're creating an app that talks to an API that allows us to create, read, update, and delete to-dos. So we can get all of the to-dos, we can get a single to-do, we can update one, we can delete them. The API has all the operations to do that, but we are building a React website that calls that API to do all of those things. Oh, glad to hear it, Kavari. Thanks for dropping in. Yeah. Yeah. So, I've just got some work to do, like I was saying. I need to... I think ultimately what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start streaming with my MacBook on the other side of the room. Okay? But I need to get that set up. I need to put another monitor over here. And then eventually I need a faster computer, honestly. Because like the more I use TypeScript and everything inside of VS Code, and the bigger the projects get, the more it's going to slow that stuff down. Like if you remember yesterday when we were doing Next.js, like that really slowed my computer down when even just installing dependencies and all of that stuff. So yeah, it's probably time to upgrade, but I don't know. I mean, the thing, like until I started using TypeScript, my computer was just fine. Everything worked fine. And the thing is, so the one that I want is the MacBook. I think it's I don't know if it's M1 or it's M2, but it's the MacBook that has a dedicated HDMI. It has an SD card slot. It has the MagSafe adapter. So it's the newer Mac, but it still has MagSafe and HDMI. That's the one that I want to get. I don't know if I'm ready to commit to that yet, though. I don't know. Okay, let's go on a raid. I am going to go live tomorrow. Yeah, a Mac Mini might be the solution, honestly. That might be the solution. I'll look into it. I might be able to find like a used one or something like that. Check out the schedule. I'm going to be live tomorrow all day. But tomorrow is another interesting stream in that it is a co-working stream. So I'll be live all day, but for a lot of it, I'll just have music on in the background, and you won't be able to see my screen. It's a thing people are doing on Twitch. It's known as like a co-working stream. Actually, I mean, let's just see if are there any co-workers on Twitch right now. I actually have the co-working tag on my stream, because a lot of people have said they like to put me on in the background anyways. So yeah, there's people doing like Bash Bunny. We raided her yesterday, but you can see that they typically like they just show their desk or whatever, and then they typically do like Pomodoro. So every 30 minutes they'll take a break, interact with chat, and then get back to working. So that's what I'm gonna do. do tomorrow. That's the plan. So tune back in tomorrow. Check out the schedule here. It should show up in your time zone if you want to tune in. And yeah, that's it. That's all. Let's go on a raid. Not rod. Raid. If you are a sub, you can use this raid message. Yeah. You can get banned for not enough activity in stream. Really? I didn't know that. I didn't know Twitch did that. Is that real? I mean, there are so many streams where there's like just ducks or just turtles. Not so many. There's a duck stream and a turtle stream where it's literally just a camera pointed at a pond. Yeah, I mean, and there's also like a I'm just sleeping category as well. So I don't know. Oh, you stream Crafty Becky? I should follow. you said I've never been banned. I mean, have you done streams where you're just like co-working? Oh, okay. I think what they meant were people stream without any interactivity, and then that potentially gets them banned. I don't know. Go find the raid messages. Let's go on a raid. Thank you everybody for hanging out. This has been fun, and I'll see you tomorrow. All day tomorrow. Right, wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And until next time, here's this.